Hey everyone, I'm Liz and welcome back to the Milk and Honey YouTube channel. Today I'm going to walk you through how to sew this super cute cell phone shoulder sling. Now this project was inspired by my Pinterest and I really like that this project doesn't have any metal hardware or zippers, so it makes it super easy to create and super accessible if you want to get into bag making but you don't want to have a lot of overhead costs. Now this bag has a cute tie on the top to keep everything safe and secure inside, and two little tabs on the sides that hold the shoulder strap. And this actually makes this adjustable, so you can change the height to make this bag shorter or longer. Finished, the bag measures 4.5 inches by 7 inches by 1 inch. I think this would be a great project to use extra scrap fabric from a dress or a pair of pants and make a matching set. And that's actually what I plan on doing with my scrap fabric from my summer dresses. And you can get really creative with the straps, and you can even make a patchwork version of the body or use contrasting pieces of fabric, or even substitute the strap for a piece of webbing or rope. In this video, I'll show you how to make the bag from start to finish. I'll have all the measurements listed in the description below, but if you prefer to follow along with a written pattern or would like to use paper templates, then you can grab the printed pattern, which can be found on my website, linked below. Let's get started. Now, if you opted in for the printed pattern and you're planning to use the templates, this part is for you. So after printing your pattern at 100% scale, you're just going to want to verify using this little square in the bottom corner and measure it and make sure that it is 1 inch by 1 inch. And once that's verified, you can start with cutting the template pages out. I included a little overview of the template pieces and how they attach together. So we're going to just move this page over. Now, some of these pattern pieces are what I like to call standalone. So all you have to do is cut it out, no gluing, no taping required. So some of these pieces are like that. Other pieces need to be attached together, and the pattern pieces themselves will tell you how to do that. So on this page here, we have the exterior pieces, and I just added little marks for where we're gonna put our ties and our side tabs just to make it a little bit easier. Now this page and the next page are the ones that are going to be a little bit more confusing. So right up here, piece B, that's a standalone piece. We can just cut that out on the thick line and that's good to go. Piece C, it's going to have to be joined together. Now there is a line here that is a little bit thinner. So we're going to cut out B2 and we're going to line it up. So the edge of B2 here, where this text is going to line up with the thinner line here. And you can either glue that or tape it together, but I recommend cutting the entire piece out, both of these pieces out. And then when they're attached together, you should have something that will look like this. And I glued it and then I put a little piece of tape on there to keep it secure. Now for piece D, this is a super long piece because this is the strap. If you prefer, you can even cut this out just using a ruler and a rotary cutter. It'd probably be a little bit easier because this strap is going to be a total of 60 inches long. We're gonna have to cut it on a fold. But to attach together, what I like to do first is just trim back one of the edges here and then align the other piece of paper so that the circles all match up, and then I would tape and glue it, then cut them both out. And then if you see here on this side, C2 and C3 need to attach together. So like before, what we did with B1 and B2, you're going to line up the edge of C2 with the thinner line here on C3, and then you can tape and glue that together. And remember that this needs to be cut on the fold. Now, since this piece, when it is put together, it is super long. So it's actually 30 inches long. Now, most fabric with the fabric is a total of about 42, 44 inches, so you won't be able to put this on the fold of some width of fabric. Let me just show you here that I have, this is going to be the fabric for today's project. And this is my fold here. And as you can see, my pattern piece is longer than the fabric. So I'll show you how to join pieces together to make a piece that is long enough. But some people, if you have enough fabric, that's why I did it this way. But I'll show you how to join it. So when you cut this piece out, just cut as much as you can. So try and cut, if you're using with the fabric, if you can cut out 2 pieces, and don't worry about not having the rest of the fabric here because I'm gonna show you how to join it. And then that also gives you the flexibility to make your strap longer if you want. But if you want a shorter strap, you could just cut one with the fabric piece and it would be about 40 inches finished. So once all our template pieces are cut out, we should have our main exterior piece, which is going to be A, E, and F. Piece B here, C, and then of course our long one, which is D. All right, starting with the cutting for the fabric. For print 1, you're going to need your 2A pieces, which measure 5 3/4 of an inch by 8 inches tall. If you're using directional fabric, you want it to be running along the 8-inch side. For piece B, you're going to want to have 2 pieces that measure 2 inches by 2 inches. These are going to be the tabs on the side of the bag. Piece C is 2 pieces that measure 2 inches by 10 inches. These are going to be the ties for the bag. If you're using directional print, you can run it along the 10-inch edge, but since this is going to be quite small, it's not going to be super noticeable unless you're using something with stripes. And finally, your D piece, which is going to measure 2 inches wide by 60 inches long. I have 2 pieces of width of fabric, 2 inches by about 42 inches. So I'm going to show you how to join these together, and then just make sure you're cutting it down to be 60 inches. From color 2, we're going to need 2 E pieces, which measure 5 3/4 of an inch by 8 inches tall. And finally, from our fusible fleece, we're going to need to cut out 2 F pieces that measure 5 3/4 of an inch by 8 inches tall. If you'd like, you can substitute this for batting or another type of interfacing. Just keep in mind that whatever you're using is going to change how fluffy the bag is. So we're going to start with our C piece, which is the 2 by 10 inch piece. And I already went ahead and pre-ironed mine just to make this step a little quicker. So what you're going to do is at your ironing board, you're going to fold the piece in half so that the wrong sides are facing each other and the long edges are touching. And you're going to create a crease right in the middle there. Then you're going to open it back up and you're going to take those same long edges, but this time you're going to meet it in the middle where that crease that you just made is, just like this. Then you'll iron that, open it back up one last time. And on one of the short edges, you're going to fold it in about 1/2 inch and then give it a good press. Then you're going to take a pair of scissors and we want to trim down the top corners so it makes it a little less bulky when we're sewing. So what we'll do is we're going to start on the edge here where the short crease is, and we're going to cut on a diagonal to meet with one of the creases we made in the second step. So we don't want the angle to go all the way to the center. We just want it to be on the sides, just like that. Now I'm going to show you how you fold this. And if you saw my other video on the tote and the book sleeve, it's the same method. So what we're going to do is fold in one of the sides on the crease that we made. Then we're going to fold the top down on that crease. We're going to fold the right over again. And then this last piece that we're left with, we're going to tuck it in between the layers of fabric, just like that. And we can just run our fingers down the rest to make sure everything is sitting nice and flat. And feel free to use pins or quilting clips to keep everything lined up. And starting at the bottom here where the raw edge is, you're going to sew down using an edge stitch all the way till you get to the closed end. You're going to pivot and you're going to go back down the other way. So you're going to repeat this on both of your C pieces. Next, we're going to prepare our knotted strap, and we're going to take our D pieces. I guess it should be a D piece because this should be 2 by 60 inches. Now, before I mentioned that if your piece isn't 60 inches long, I'm going to show you how to join that. Now, there are 2 methods you can use for joining. The first is a little bit more beginner friendly, and that is simply just taking your 2 pieces and laying them right sides together. And then you take this to your machine, and on the short end, just going across using either a 1/4 inch seam allowance if your edges are raw and it's not the selvage. Mine's a selvage, so I would just sew a straight line across. The only downside with this method is when you open it up and then you have to fold it to make it into a strap, this is going to be really bulky. So I am going to do it the more advanced way. It's not super advanced, but if you're brand new to sewing, it's definitely not the easiest. And that is doing the same way you would make bias tape. So you would take your piece and you would lay them on top of each other, like so, with the right sides facing. And I'm just going to use my cutting mat here to make sure my lines are nice and straight. And using a ruler and a marking pen, this one's just a water-soluble one, I'm going to put my ruler down diagonally, just like this. It keeps moving. Draw a line on the diagonal like this, and just throw a pin in here. And it's important to note which way the diagonal line is facing, because if we did it this way, then our bias tape would, our strap would only be this much longer. So you can almost imagine it, okay, I'm going to sew across this line here, and then when I open it up, the fabric will continue this way. So I'm going to quickly just take this to the machine and sew across that 45-degree line. So I joined my 2 pieces, and I just went ahead and I ironed open that seam and I trimmed down the fabric. And then I also trimmed the piece down to be 60 inches long. I already took my piece to the iron, and the way that you're going to fold this is the same as you did the ties, by folding it in half with the long edges facing each other. And then again, with the long edges coming into the middle to encase the fabric. The only difference is instead of closing the end on one side, you're going to close both ends. So again, you'll just trim down the sides. And you'll fold your piece in on the right, then down. in again, and then tuck and fold. And I don't have my pins here with me, but you're going to do the same method on the other side where you fold. And fold down, cross, and tuck, just like that. Perfect. So you're going to take this to your machine, and starting with the open side, you're going to sew all the way down and around. And then when you get to the closed end, you're going to pivot, sew across, and then back down the other side to secure the entire strap. Now we're going to move on to preparing the strap tabs, which is going to go on either side of the bag. And we're going to take our B piece. I already pre-ironed mine, and what you're going to do is you're going to fold it in half with the wrong sides facing each other, and you're going to give it a press. Then you'll open it back up and then fold in the two sides to meet the center crease. Give that an iron and then fold it together. And then you're going to take it to your machine and you're going to sew down the sides to secure it in place. And you're going to repeat this on your remaining B piece. Next, we're going to prepare our exterior pieces. So to do that, we're going to take our A and F pieces, and we're going to place the A pieces so that the wrong side of the A piece is facing the glue side of the fusible piece. And we're going to do this to both of our A and F pieces, and we're going to fuse them using the manufacturer's instructions, and then we're going to quilt them as desired. In my sample, it's a little hard to see because it's black, but I just went with straight lines down the 8-inch edge. So I'm going to do probably the same thing on this one. So once your pieces are all quilted, you should have something that look like this. As you can see, I went with a different quilting pattern than I thought I would. Now, I usually get questions about the tag that I put on here. I got mine from AliExpress, and I put it 2.5 inches down and centered it on my piece, and then I just stitched it on. So now that these are ready to go, we're going to attach the ties that we made, and these are the 10-inch ties. So to do that, if you want, you can pull out the template if you have it. If you don't, you can use a marking pen, and you're going to want to locate the center of the front. And you're going to take your tie, and you can kind of decide, which one you want to be the front or the one that's seen. I like this side a little bit better. So I'm going to face it down and center it on the top edge. And I'm going to do the same with the other exterior piece. I'm just going to use this as a guide, and I want that. And just like that. And you can use a pin to keep these in place. And you're going to take it to your sewing machine, and you're going to sew using a scant 1/4 inch, just so we don't see those stitch lines afterwards. So once those are attached, it should be looking something like this. And we're going to put one of the pieces to the side, and we're going to grab the side tabs that we made earlier. And again, our template, and if you don't have the template, I'll let you know the measurement in a second. So we want to have these side tabs lined up 2 inches down from the top on the right and left side. And what I did was just took the tab, folded it in half so the raw edges would meet, and then we're just placing it 2 inches down from the top on both sides. And again, you can use a quilting clip to keep it in place, and you're going to sew across the edge using a edge stitch. So now that those are attached, we can start assembling our bag. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these ties, and we're going to lift them up so that they are out of the way. And we're going to flip the pieces so that the right sides are together. Let me just bring my quilting clips in here. We want the right sides to be together, and we want all the edges to align, just like so. I'll just pop a couple clips in here, just like this. Perfect. So we're gonna take this to the machine and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch away from the edge on the side, bottom, and other side, making sure to leave the top here open. So after sewing all the way around, we are going to mark our boxed corners. So to do that, we're going to take a ruler and a marking pen, and from the sewn line, we're going to mark 1/2 inch on both sides, just like that. And what I like to do is just make a little line on the diagonal, and we're going to repeat this on all 4 corners. So once it's marked, you're going to just put your hand inside and separate the fabric. And you're going to pull across to make a little triangle just like this. Oh, I almost forgot. We need to trim our corners first. So let's do that really quick. Let's just trim our corners on both sides. Perfect. Okay, and now we're going to box the corners. So we're gonna make our little triangle, and you see these lines that I had made on the diagonal. They help me to see where the triangle should go. And what you'll wanna do is have the fabric seams going in opposite directions. So if the bottom seam's going to the right, make the side seam go to the left, and I'll just clip that in. And then we'll flip it and do the same thing on this side. And just be mindful that the way you flip the seam stays consistent all the way through. So this seam is pointing that way, so we want to make sure it's pointing the same way on this side, and that this seam is facing the opposite way. So we'll just clip that in place, and we'll take it to our sewing machine, and we're going to sew across on both sides and clip our corners. Now we're going to take our 2 E pieces, and we're going to place them so that the right sides are facing each other. And for this one, we're going to have to leave a gap so that we can turn the bag inside out. So what you're going to do is you're going to sew down about 2 inches or 3 inches, and you're going to stop here. And then you're going to start back about, let's do about 3 inches over. And then you're going to sew down, pivot across the bottom, and then back to the top, making sure to leave one of the short edges open. So after we've sewn around the perimeter, we're going to take our scissors and trim our corners here and here. Perfect. And again, taking our marking pen and our ruler, we're going to measure out our box corners, which is 1/2 inch from the sewn seam, just like this. And again, the diagonal is totally optional. I just find that I get a more consistent corner when I do that. Probably should be using a smaller ruler, but I don't know where my little one went. So the big one it is. And then flip it and do the same on the other side. Perfect. So putting our hand inside the fabric, we're going to pull it apart, so we can make that flat triangle. And remembering to fold our seam allowance in opposite directions. And then to follow through so that the bottom seam allowance is in the same direction on both sides, like that. And again, we'll take this to the sewing machine and sew across on both sides and clip our corners. So now, taking our exterior and our lining, we're going to flip our lining so that the right side is facing out. And we're going to place it inside the exterior. We want to make sure that our ties are on the inside of the bag, like this. And we're going to place the lining inside, just like that. And we're going to line up the side seams, just like this. And I like to point them in opposite directions. Oh, and make sure you follow through with your seam allowance. I almost forgot. So because the seam allowance down here is pointing to the right, I'm going to make sure it's still pointing to the right at the top. Same with this one, it's pointing to the left. I'll face it to the left, and then I'll face this one to the right. And nest them together like so. Clip it in place. And then I will disperse the remaining lining around the rest of the edge here. So everything's nice and even. Whoops. Just like that. And we're going to sew around the top, around the entire perimeter using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So after it's sewn, we can pull the lining out from inside the bag, and using that hole we left in the side, we can start to turn it right side out. Whoops! Oh, don't do what I just did. I think I just ripped my fabric. Yeah, I just ripped my fabric. Oh no! Be careful when you're turning it inside out so you don't rip your fabric like I just did. I think it'll be okay. I think it might have just been the seam. We'll see in a second. Oh no. Okay, pull the ties out. I haven't done that in so long. Okay, let's assess the damage. And we'll push this through. Oh, stuck. All right, so we're gonna push out the corners, just using our fingers, and be gentle because fabric does rip. All right, let me see here. Yeah, you can see I just ripped my fabric just a little bit right there. So be careful, and you can even leave your opening a little bit bigger than I did. I think I suggested 3 inches, so you might want to go 3.5, but usually 3 I'm okay with. I think I was just too excited. So one of our last steps is going to be closing this hole in the side, and you can either do this by hand using a ladder stitch. I show an example of how to do that in my boxy pouch video if you want a more in-depth tutorial, but I think I'm just going to use my machine and do an edge stitch along the side. Once that's sewn, we're going to tuck our lining inside the bag, and we're going to use an iron to press this top seam where the lining and exterior fabric meet. And then we're going to sew a top stitch all the way around the perimeter just to keep the lining in place and so the fabric doesn't shift. So after the inside and the top edge is sewn, you should have something left that looks like this. And our final step is going to be attaching our strap. And to do that, we're just going to feed the strap, and I like to just fold it in half just to make it a little easier to feed it through. Just gonna feed it through on one side. And I leave about, how many inches is this? About 6 inches. And make a knot. I think I'm gonna make 2 knots. Perfect. And then on the other side, same thing. I just kind of push it down with my thumb to open up the hole. And make a couple knots. 2 is definitely more secure than 1. It all depends on how far in you placed your side tabs. And we can just tie this top up like so. And there you have it. You have your very own cell phone side sling bag. You can match it to any outfit that you want to make, or you can gift it to a friend and use your scrap fabrics. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. If you did, please make sure to subscribe and like this video. If you have ideas for future projects, please leave them in the comments below and I will see what I can do. Happy sewing, everyone!